программе используется ненормативная лексика, контент только для взрослой аудитории с устойчивой психикой и политически активной позицией. Мнение спикеров программы может не совпадать с мнением авторов проекта или участников чата. Прямо сейчас настоящие новости важнее, чем когда-либо прежде. Поддержите честную альтернативную точку зрения, ток-шоу в прямом эфире. Ваша финансовая помощь будет способствовать возрождению журналистики и поможет защитить наши свободы для будущих поколений.
Здравствуйте, друзья! Добрый вечер! В эфире программа «Время, логики» с Татьяной Тулиной. И я ужасно рада всех вас видеть, потому что дни у меня теперь просто совершенно невозможно. Расписание минута к минуте. Вот раньше делала уроки, у меня начинались там в 10:30, в 11 часов или в 2 часа, а теперь у меня в 1 час 15, час 10. И все back-to-back, потому что набирает обороты избирательная кампания, потому что у нас время наступает очень непростое. А, кстати, друзья, а знаете ли вы, что у нас теперь появился новый вариант? Новый вирус у нас появился. Недолго мы отдыхали от нашего омикрона и вообще от всей этой байды. И у нас теперь совершенно новый омикрон, и называется он, сейчас я вам скажу, как он теперь у нас называется, и он со страшной скоростью распространяется у нас теперь по стране, и называется он BA2. Вот, BA2. И теперь вот я прочитала только что, буквально 2 часа назад, я прочитала новую, так скажем, новость, и Фаучи показал свое лицо где он там прячется, была даже информация о том, что он является, если не свидетелем Иеговы, но это я так шучу, то уж, по крайней мере, он прячется якобы, будучи страшным-пристрашным свидетелем, вот, по всем остальным программам и так далее, где он оказался вовлечен. Но у нас с вами на сегодня новость. Пожалуйста, обратите внимание все, что не только война происходит то есть в Украине не только идет война, но еще на всякий случай напоминаем, чтобы все снова достали свои шприцы, чтобы глубоко не прятали маски и чтобы вообще не расслабляли, вот не хочу говорить что, но не расслаблялись, чтобы. Поэтому нам напоминают, что распространяется снова BA2 теперь вирус, он более, да, добро пожаловать в новый омикрон оксиморон. На самом деле мы должны приготовиться к тому, что, значит, будет очередная, говорят, умный, моему обожаемому Быкову. Я не буду то, чтобы он у меня мой обожаемый, мне нравятся некоторые из его произведений, его точки зрения, я с ними не со всеми согласна. Вот, и уж совсем я не согласна с той манерой, с которой он разговаривает. Он у меня дома был 2 дня, и мой супруг сказал, что он, в общем-то, может быть, не готов к тому, чтобы Дмитрий возвращался бы к нам, так скажем, как гость, и вот был бы у нас гостеприимно принят. Да, повторюсь. Возвращаясь к вирусу. Вы знаете, я вот тут была на днях в клинике, просто на обычном ежегодном осмотре, и мне тут же прицепили маску, сказали, немедленно оденьте маску, иначе мы вас не будем обслуживать. Я говорю, как же так, у нас же мандат-то сброшен, у нас же все нормально, теперь уже и Сенат принял, и emergency закончилась. А мне говорят, вот нечего. Это на самом деле у нас тут все ничего не поменялось в healthcare. У нас все требования остались, у нас требования вакцинации. Меня не спросили вакцинацию на в ходе, но, значит, симптомы спросили и сказали, что, может быть, там у вас на улицах можно маски не носить, а у нас в клинике и в кабинетах у нас ничего не поменялось. Также ничего не поменялось во многих церквях. У нас репетиции оперы проходили в одной церкви, в другой сейчас церкви проходит в огромной. И также в... Ага. У нас есть, Виталик, у нас подсоединилась Паулина. Паулина, хай! Итак, ребят, я могу сейчас тему вируса поставить на hold. И у нас сегодня в гостях совершенно удивительная женщина. I'm saying that the amazing woman is our guest today. I just started to, not knowing when you're gonna come in, I just saw in the news that we have a new variant. Did you see? BA2 COVID variant is now...
I was wondering what you were talking about when you said BA2.
I've
been in the wonderful world of court, so I did not know we have another variant.
We do, and it's spreading really, really, really fast, and it's a lot more dangerous. Already it's determined it's a lot more dangerous than Omicron. And now I'm going to introduce you in Russian, and then the floor we will be talking. I will be translating once in a while, not all the time, just a summary, so we can keep going. Итак, друзья, зрители наши дорогие, у нас сегодня очень почетный гость, очень интересная особо, очень интересная женщина и профессионал. Это судья, judge, зовут ее Паулина Хавелка. Она родилась, выросла в Польше, иммигрант в Соединенных Штатах. Потрясающая совершенно женщина, сама себя сделала, росла, здесь выросла, она приехала сюда подростком, растила 2 детей, мать-одиночка, развелась, растила детей и стала настоящим полноценным судьей. И сейчас она занимает этот пост, расскажет о себе немного. И также она баллотируется. То есть мы с ней коллеги, и у нас с ней самые тяжелые рейсы. То есть наши гонки с ней самые тяжелые, потому что мы должны выиграть самую большую территорию, на которой проживает много демократов. So I just said that you are guest. We have an guest of honor today. Judge, an amazing woman that was born and raised in Poland, and you are here in the United States for a few decades. You experienced all kinds of stages in your life, being divorced, being a single mom, and you're a self-made professional judge. You are currently judge, and you are running to be a judge. So please welcome and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, the first thing I should mention is that Poland required you to take Russian in the 4th grade, and I left Poland in the middle of the 3rd grade.
Oh, you were late.
I apologize. There were a few words that I could understand, but they were kind of scattered, and so I couldn't really put the idea together when you were speaking. But it is wonderful to hear you speak, and I know under the circumstances, your heart's heavy, so I appreciate you.
It is heavy.
And I'm honored to be here and be your guest.
Thank you. Паулина сказала, что она жила в Польше до 12 лет. С 4 класса в Польше был обязательным русский язык. Она уехала до того, как. И поэтому по-русски знает только несколько слов. Я могу предложить по-украински поговорить, но я не думаю, что мы будем успешны в этом плане. Но тем не менее, она очень рада быть нашим гостем. Она знает, что сердце у нас не на месте в связи с войной, но она сегодня с нами, чтобы мы узнали о ней, узнали о том, что, и, кстати, происходит в Польше сегодня. Она очень хорошо в курсе о том, что, конечно же, у нее там семья, мама, родственники, то есть все знают о том, что Польша принимает беженцев из Украины. Мы тоже об этом поговорим. I just said that thank you so much, and that we appreciate your compassion and your sympathies with what's happening currently in Ukraine, and we are very grateful that Poland accepts refugees, and it's one of the biggest amount of refugees are accepted by Poland, provided meals, hot meals, provided basic medical aid, roof over their head, and basically all the life needs. So if you know a little bit about it, maybe you can cover that. So we kind of like on the same page.
So my mother still gets Polish TV. And it's interesting what you hear.
Mama's here, right? In
Yes.
America?
No,
Okay, Mama's здесь.
only my parents immigrated. My father has passed in 2018, so I only have my mother left, and she happened to need to go to the doctor, and so last week I took her, and I didn't want to leave her alone right away, so I stayed with her, and she kept wanting to change the channel because she watches the news all the time, and she has literally had tears at the end of her nose since beginning of March, and really just the days before it. But I had the opportunity to sort of see the Polish perspective rather than the Western perspective of what's going on. I cannot begin to tell you how glad and how proud I am that even a country that in its own right is struggling with one thing or another, because as you know, it's the idea of democracy is fairly new, even though it's not, but in terms of historical time it is. The fact that we have responded the way that we have, and we have allowed, from what I understand, close to 180, is it 180,000 or
close to 1 million as we hear.
okay. I thought, I'm sorry, I thought we were a little closer. I thought the number was much bigger, and I got a little, I think,
I believe 800,000 to 1 million. That's something like that.
And I don't know, I don't know where it's coming from, but I do know that we all have something in common as Eastern Europeans. And that is that when the times get tough, even when we don't have it, we'll still share our last piece of bread with one another. That is the brotherhood or the sisterhood that I'm used to, and it was wonderful to see that. Obviously, it was heartbreaking to see what's happening in Ukraine itself. I think what really captured my heart, you mentioned I'm a single mom, or I was a single mom, and seeing the mothers with backpacks and just whatever they could take from home and to flee and not have anything to go back to, and babies in their arms, and it's just heartbreaking. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. I'm proud to say that we have family in Poland that has stepped up and has sent aid to the border. My understanding from some of the other Polish families here in Charlotte, that their families happen to live on the border and have been actively helping in getting folks to the right trains and to the right locations by obviously asking them where they want to go. There are a lot of Ukrainians that have chosen to remain in Poland, but they have also assisted those that wanted to go further west. So, I'm just proud. I'm proud that we have stepped up the way that we have. I grew up 3 miles away from Auschwitz. It's something I experienced.
Wow.
I was
From
10.
Auschwitz?
Yes, ma'am. Chrzanów is actually where I'm from. It sounds like I'm sneezing, but it's actually a city. And
Wow.
I got to see it for myself, and it impacted me so much that now, 38 years later, I remember it like it literally happened yesterday. I can tell you what I saw. I can tell you what it looked like. The feeling I had walking through, the camp. And where I'm going with this is just to simply say that tragedy and suffering and violence has just never been, it's just been something that I avoid at all costs. I feel like diplomacy is
Absolutely.
necessary and important. But, I also recognize, so I don't want to sound like I'm necessarily taking sides. I'm expressing, just my deepest feelings about violence and suffering in general. But, there are times when, as I like to say in court, there's love and then there's tough love. And I'm not sure who's exercising that and whether or not the others deserve it. I'm not making or passing judgment. I'm just simply saying that, I don't understand all of the intricate details that I think we would need to, and the history necessary to really understand what's going on. And I don't want to make a judgment call on something that I'm not as educated in as I should be.
I'm just gonna give summary to our
Yes,
viewers.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Sure, of course. Паулина выросла в 3 километрах от Аушвица. То есть ее город, где она выросла, как раз расположен именно там. И она была там девочкой, видела и помнит все, что она видела. И это одно из самых страшных впечатлений, которое у нее за всю жизнь. Она против жестокости, против решения вопросов через жестокие решения и жесткие решения. Однако исторически факты нужно все принимать во внимание для того, чтобы понять, что можно сделать сейчас, желательно дипломатическим путем. Что касается Польши, что делает Польша? Принимают, кормят, обувают, одевают, дают денег, отправляют туда, куда хотят ехать беженцы. Она говорит, что очень тяжело видеть мам, которые с рюкзаками, с детками в руках, у которых больше, в общем-то, ничего нет. Они не знают, смогут ли они вернуться в Украину, в свои родные места, в свой родной город, в свою квартиру или дом. Значит, семья, которая живет недалеко от границы, они друзья. И она говорит, что помогают всем, чем могут. То есть встречают, подсказывают, на какой поезд сесть, куда поехать. Кто-то решает остаться в Польше, кто-то решает ехать дальше в Европу. Но Паулина подчеркнула, что ее впечатления детские от концентрационного лагеря Аушвиц настолько сильны, настолько были поразительные и сильные по эмоциональным ощущениям, что такое, конечно же, не забывается. Thank you, Pauline.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
We have our viewers saying thank you for everything that Poland does for Ukrainian refugees. Thank you so much.
Well, absolutely. I'm proud of our people, and I'm glad they're doing it.
All right. So please tell us, how did you become a judge? Why did you want to be a judge? How does it work?
So I started in 1997 with my high school diploma in the Mecklenburg County Clerk's Office, which is the backbone of the court system, of any court system here in the United States. And I, during the interview, this is sort of comical, I realized I was taking a pay cut from being a runner for a law firm to becoming a clerk. And I don't know what took over me, but I said, I will not take the job unless you put me in the courtroom. And the gentleman who interviewed me actually walked out the room. So I thought, well, this is over. And then he came back in and he said, I'll give you 30 days. And in 30 days, if you prove that you can handle the courtroom, I'll let you stay. And if not, then, you will have to go through the regular channels of getting to the courtroom, which usually probably entails about a year or so of training. And I said, okay. And I sat in court for the first time. And just like I understood only a few words of what you just said, that's about as much as I understood through the court proceedings. And
the language is separate, completely separate.
It is. It's a language of its own. And so first week I thought, what was I thinking? I'm crazy. And then, as time went on, I got better and better. And I got so good that I actually only trained for 3 weeks, and I was let go, and I was working on my own in the courtroom. And, little by little, I started.
Doing what? Doing what in the
I was a
courtroom? As a clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
And what does
would-
what do clerks do? Just enlighten us. Maybe we have
well,
some
they
ideas.
keep the record. They
They
keep the
keep the
record.
record.
They're the ones who actually officially certify the judgments that the judges enter. They are the communicators in writing between the courthouse as well as the jail. I worked in the criminal side, so I can't really speak to the civil side. I know that it's a little bit more involved than criminal is in some ways. There are different entities, governmental agencies and entities that a civil clerk communicates with more so than a criminal clerk. My main communication was the jail, making sure that the jail cards are accurate, that people are being released when they need to, whatever the bond was set, that it was, correct. So at one, I enjoyed the fast pace of it. Criminal is definitely much more faster in pace than civil. But I learned so much, and then for someone to come from a country where I felt like our government was a bit oppressive, if not a lot, and communist, and whatever they said went. It was interesting to see the United States, well, what I understood it to be United States. Obviously, I speak for the state of North Carolina, but it was interesting to see how it works. And or I should say, doesn't work. And so those are the things that I observed. And I thought, well, what can I do to change things? Or how do I figure out how to improve something when I'm just a itty bitty clerk? That was just sort of the mindset. And I thought, well, I spoke to my mom. I was a single mother of two. And I said, Mom, what do you think about law school? And first response was, how long? And
So let me translate this, Tulin.
said, I'm still not quite done with community college. We've got 2 years of a
Ooh,
college and 3 years in law school. And God bless my mom. She thought about it. She was actually cooking. She kind of put her head down. She had my back to me, and then she turned around and she said, but you're really going to do this. And I said, Mom, I just feel it. And I think I could do I could do this. And
mhm.
she said, okay, I support you 100%. She and my dad at the time helped, in raising the kids. In the meantime, between me actually starting law school and getting accepted and finishing my 4-year degree, my parents divorced. And my mom is currently remarried with a man who was extremely supportive of me and supported her during obviously some trying times of being not only a single mother, but of an adult, but also a single grandmother of two little babies. And
Wow.
I'm forever grateful. I mean, the fact that I was a bit of a troublemaker. I came to
I
United
can
States.
tell. Why is it
Yeah.
that I can tell?
I don't know. I have a great sense of humor, Tatiana. But what I mean by that is, I think when I look back and I reflect, I came here when I was 11. I learned the language much faster than my parents. And I began to dibble and dabble in calling, bill collectors or, insurance companies and things like that. And so I started to involve myself, or I should say my parents involved me in a lot of adult activities that it made sort of got to my head. And I thought, well, I mean, if this is what life is all about, and all I have to do is be a good wife and have children and raise a family, then I can do this. This is like in my head at the time was
Let
easy.
me let me just give the summary to our
Yes, ma'am.
viewers. Yes,
Yes,
of course,
ma'am.
because we have people from Israel, from different states of the United States, from Germany, and from, I believe, from Canada, and that's they all are fascinated with your stories. Not all of them do speak English.
Understood.
So, Паулина, я добавлю к тому, что сказал Семен, он вообще так это практически 100% переводит, мы все видим, да? Вот, значит, на самом деле она решила стать судьей, потому что она хотела поступить в одну юридическую фирму, и сказала им, она им очень понравилась, хотели ее нанять, она сказала, что вот я хочу, чтобы уже я была работником, чиновником, клерком в суде, поэтому давайте-ка вы меня обучите для того, чтобы я уже от вашей фирмы работала как клерк в суде. У нее было на это 30 дней, она этот очень-очень сильный курс, такой серьезный курс, закончила за 3 недели. Да, она принадлежит к республиканской партии, сейчас сама скажет. Значит, мама ей очень помогала, мама готовила, как европейская мама, восточноевропейская мама, польская мама, помогала, готовила и помогала поднимать семью и ей становиться профессионалом. Она закончила 3 года в школе в Law School и 2 года в комьюнити колледже. All right.
So,
You've got
long
question.
story
You've got the question. Do you
I
belong
was
to the
just going to
Republic?
say I graduated law school in 2004. I opened my practice in 2006, and I didn't get elected until 2018. So I was an attorney for close to 15 years or so.
Attorney. То есть она
Yes.
была адвокатом, 15 лет была адвокатом, юристом.
Yes, ma'am.
So there are questions from our Israeli enthusiast. He's asking, your father also was a lawyer?
No.
Нет,
My
Сёма.
father, with no English language, was first a carpenter in New York City, then a
Полы клал в Нью-Йорке.
and then ultimately the reason we ended up in Charlotte is because he was a truck driver.
И он был тракистом, дальнобойщиком. Поэтому вот они так получилось, что переехали сюда, он здесь получил работу дальнобойщика. Так что до Жириновского не тянет. All right. And
Go ahead. Do you want
Yes,
me to
ma'am.
finish or?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes,
Well,
Your Honor.
I just, because I left off where I said I was a bit of a troublemaker, and I want to
Yes.
make sure that
Everyone
there's always going to
understands.
be a little bit of rebel in me. I like to challenge myself, and I like to challenge, with things and statements and beliefs. So we came down to Charlotte. I was doing very well in New York City. I was offered a full ride to St. John's University for mathematics. My parents didn't quite appreciate what that meant. Quite frankly, I didn't either. They moved down south, and the Southern educational system, because of whatever the transcripts indicated in New York, actually put me far back into math, much further than I was already at. And I got bored. And, that's when skipping school started, and my friends became more important than my future. And I did graduate, but I didn't graduate from the high school I started. I graduated from Northside Baptist, which is a Christian school here in Charlotte. Because as my mother thought she was sort of losing me or losing her grasp in me, she put me in a private school, which was a blessing in that it took me out of the, friendships and environments that were somewhat getting myself in trouble, even though I think I was responsible for that myself. But the other culture shock was that I was raised Catholic, and I then learned a little bit about the Baptist faith, and that was a very interesting endeavor.
Here in Charlotte.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's a Bible Belt.
It is, and it's what the irony is that my parents thought Northside Christian Academy, and so they thought, well, we're all Christians, but there are very different, distinct beliefs between obviously the Catholics and the Baptists, and so it was a culture shock. So I lived the culture shock by coming from a very small town from Poland to New York City. from New York City to the South. I felt like I drove back 30 years.
That's right.
From public school systems to a Baptist school and Bible classes. And that was very interesting. And then I graduated, met my first husband, and, fell in love. And I got pregnant. I was 18. I had my son at 19. I then had my daughter at 21, and I was divorced by 22.
Итак, следующий блок биографии Паулины. Она была всегда такая вот непослушная. И когда они переехали в Шарлотт, пока она училась в Нью-Йорке, вот в какой-то определенный момент друзья стали иметь больше значения, чем учеба, и она пропускала учебу, переехали в Шарлотт, и там такой тоже был как бы культурный шок. Во-первых, Шарлотт — это же такая консервативная атмосфера, более консервативная. Нью-Йорк такой весь прогрессивный, либеральный. Там можно безобразничать, здесь немножко меньше безобразничать. И тут ее воспитали как католик, она католичка. И, соответственно, она увидела, что здесь в Шарлотте баптисты. Это был Шарлотт, считается, он так и называется, Bible Belt, то есть он вот входит в этот опоясывающий всю Америку, называется библейский пояс. Вот и поэтому вот здесь она уже и дальше жила, и забеременела в 18 лет, вот и родила ребенка, будучи очень молодой мамой. Okay, young mother, rebellion, yes. Young mother.
Well, it was my very first pregnancy that was a shock in the best way possible. I wanted, I wanted to be a mom. I always knew I wanted to be a mom, but I had no idea what that meant. And when the pregnancy with my son, I don't know, just something, it was like a switch, on and off.
Sure.
Started to get very serious about school. My grades improved. They obviously improved as the second pregnancy. And then I don't know, I just decided to spread my wings and fly, and finished UNC Charlotte. Went to law school in Virginia, and it broke my heart not to have my children with me and to be away. Because I do love my kids, and I would do anything for them. I think they know that, but I knew that I needed to offer them something more, and so I did. And
so that was a sacrifice. То есть она родила двоих детей и уехала. Значит, у нее стало вот серьезно, она стала вот более серьезной, когда стала мамой, стала очень ответственно относиться к учебе, вот хорошо закончила школу и уехала учиться в Вирджинию, а мама смотрела детишек.
So, when I came back,
typical East European story. My mom helped me to raise my kids.
Yep.
As well. I wouldn't do it without her. Here in the US, I had to, I had two kids that didn't know English. Then they had to study, and then I had two more. And I had to study and already work, and going in a university and work in the same time, plus a little bit of cooking as well. But mom was cooking a lot, so very similar. Бабушки,
well, I
бабушки.
Think what we learned is that we're a lot more similar than we are different.
Oh, wonderful statement. Полина говорит, я говорю, что тоже мне мама помогала, и наши бабушки, вот наши восточноевропейские бабушки, украинские, польские, русские, они нам на самом деле помогают, ну точно не как американки. Поэтому Паулина говорит, что у нас больше общего, чем разного. Do you say бабушка in Polish?
Babcia.
Babcia. Babcia.
Right now, I am officially a happy grandmother of one.
О, вот она бабушка тоже, у нее теперь есть him, right? Grandson?
Layla, it's a little girl.
О, это Лейла, девочка, внучечка.
Now I know the love my mother felt when she held my son.
Ага. И вот у нее тоже теперь она понимает, что это такое, когда ее мама любила ее детей. Мгм.
Oh,
Она очень классная, Элла, она вообще золотая просто.
I was going to say I think he's still her favorite, and he's still the baby, if you know what I mean. So she likes to spoil him.
Absolutely. Well, that's the thing. If we don't spoil enough our kids, we're ready to spoil. I spoil my cat now because I don't have a grandkids yet. No,
Yet.
my sons promised me, but but it still is there looking for. They told me they cannot find good girl in America. They need somebody else. Maybe Polish, maybe Ukrainian girl, maybe a Belarusian girl, maybe I don't know.
Tell them they're looking in the wrong places.
They do.
There are lots of wonderful American girls.
No, they told me all American girls are bitches. Sorry. Я тут рассказываю еще про своих
disagree
детей,
with that.
мальчишек. If you
I'd
know
have to
one,
disagree
if you
with
know
that, but
one or two, let me know.
culturally, it is hard to understand some of what we experience, and the differences that we do have culturally. That makes sense, but I'd like to think. I have a lot of friends that are very, very Southern. I have a lot of friends that are very, very country. And I will tell you that they're pure gold. Hearts are big. They grew up on farms. They grew up on waking up in the morning and taking care of the animals and taking care of the farm. And it's almost hard to believe when you look at a city like Charlotte, like, where are the farms? Well, if you go outside of Charlotte, that's all you're going to see. So
Exactly.
I think sometimes we make a judgment call of, say, I don't like anybody from California, but the truth is, you've met 5 people from California. You haven't actually met people in California. So you can't judge California by 5, and you can't judge a race or a culture because you've met one bad person. That's just
Well, my guys live in Minnesota now, so they
wow.
They got burned, and well, we lived in Minnesota for 12 years. My kids, American kids, were born there, and my husband was born and raised there on a farm, and that's where he is right now with his sister that turns 60 today. So they all celebrate her birthday while I am here doing my job, work, and rehearsal with Opera Carolina. Hey.
Well, you're a very busy woman, but you're an incredible woman.
Oh, it's about you today. It's about
Well,
you. No.
I understand, but I think one strong woman to another. It's we look at our triumphs. We appreciate what we overcame, and we're willing to always lend a helping hand to those that need it. And if I inspire one person, and just one person a day, that makes it all worth it for me.
Полина говорит, что я пожаловалась, что мои сыновья не хотят пока жениться, потому что они считают американских девочек негодными для этого, и я не буду говорить слово по-русски, которое я сказала по-английски. Но она говорит, что все впереди, и много девочек, которых надо искать как раз, может быть, в сельских районах, а не испорченных городских девочек. Вот, ну, и она сказала, что вот мы, вот восточноевропейские женщины, мы друг друга понимаем, готовы помочь друг другу, и в этом, в общем-то, и состоит сильная женщина, сильной женщине. Конечно, мы будем помогать. Thank you, Pauline.
Yes, ma'am.
You always can count on my help. Она говорит, что если хотя бы одного человека она вдохновит на что-то лучшее, на что-то хорошее. So tell us about your experience. You are in criminal, right, court.
Well, when I first took the bench in 2018, I was assigned to family court, and I was there
family court. Oh, yeah.
I did custody, child support, equitable distributions, post-separation support, alimony. And then another judge was appointed. And so because of conflicts, he was very active in the criminal bar. They chose to take me out of family and put me in criminal, which is something I practiced for 15 years. So I enjoyed that. And it was nice to see all of my friends again, because most criminal lawyers don't go to family and most family lawyers don't go to criminal. So it was nice to see them. And since then, the pandemic came and I was assigned to domestic violence. And I've spent close to 9 months straight in domestic violence. And during the pandemic, it just, it's
Spiked.
a tough subject. It's, it's a lot of pain. It's a lot of anger. It's a lot of violence. And so it finally got to me. I always think of myself as someone that can, carry the weight, and I'm a big girl and I've got this. But I will admit that after 9 months, I I was I was definitely, walking my way into a depression. And so they confronted.
Your own way into depression.
Yes, ma'am. Well, I think if you're somebody who feels, even though in the robe I'm not supposed to, it's hard to hang the robe up and not be a person. It's hard to run away from that. And I wouldn't want to. I mean, I think one of the reasons why I am a good judge is because I am a person and I recognize that the people that are in front of me are people, and we all have the same, needs. Most of us have the same wants, and it's just going about it the right way or going about it the wrong way. And
That's for sure. That's
yeah,
for
and
sure.
so, we've got to treat each other with dignity. We've got to treat each other with respect, and I try to do that. But domestic violence is it's just a very tough emotional courtroom.
So what exactly was happening? Она рассказывает, что я спросила, чем она занимается, да, чтобы мы имели понятие, в какой именно сфере она практикует судебной. Она была и в семейная практика, и разводы, и опека, и, значит, алименты. А затем она оказалась в уголовной сфере. И вот уголовная сфера – это, конечно, просто такой очень непростой сегмент работы. И вот во время ковида она говорит, что просто неслыханный был взрыв. Мы об этом говорили на «Котах» много, да, о том, что вот люди там, то есть мы знаем, и мы в новостях читали, депрессия, что домашний, значит, абьюз возрос и violence возросло дома. Это мы просто разговариваем, да, об этом, как бы не к тому, что вот у кого-то там в доме. А она видит это каждый день. И она говорит, что до такой степени взрыв был вот именно жестокого обращения дома, в домашних условиях, что она сама просто впала в депрессию.
Well, and I think it's important to note that it probably had a lot to do with the pandemic.
Sure.
Everybody's in the home. The children are home. Schools are out. Parents are working from home if they're working. Bills are backing up. You can't go anywhere. So I think it was, a mixture. It was a combination of things, but our domestic violence courts in Mecklenburg County really skyrocketed. We went from one courtroom to two the entire
Wow.
time during the pandemic. So it was busy. It was very, very busy. And, listen, some cases they don't belong there. They never did. This was just a difference of opinion. Two people who normally found themselves 40 hours away from each other are now 40 hours together. So not all of them were so severe, but the ones that were severe, now you have the children in the home. So it's not mommy and daddy arguing while we're at school. It's mommy and daddy arguing, while I'm in the next room. And, just sometimes you wonder how terrible one human being can be to another. Yeah.
Она говорит, что удивительно, насколько вот действительно просто выросло количество жестокого обращения дома, и она просто понимает, да, мы все понимаем, что люди, которые не видели друг друга по 40 часов, работали, вдруг оказались в одном месте, что они не привыкли к такому, что дети дома, они дома, выйти никуда нельзя, все испуганы, напуганы, этот ковид, эти маски. И она говорит, просто удивительно, что, оказывается, люди могут делать друг с другом, человек может сделать с человеком, просто находясь дома какое-то количество времени больше.
So it just, I think, between the court that I was in all the time, which typically before the pandemic, each judge was never assigned for longer than a week. Being there 9 months started to really get to me because
Вау!
I
Ее,
can put
она думала, что
put
она
on a
неделю
strong
будет
face.
что она неделю будет заниматься этим. У нас, оказывается, количество судов выросло до 2. То есть у нас был один суд, который занимался домашними этими абьюзами, а их было так много, что увеличили даже количество судебных комнат, выделили еще одну специальную комнату, чтобы все эти судебные процессы обрабатывать.
So it like I said, I think it was a combination. But after I had spoken with my chief, and I think it became pretty obvious to my colleagues that because I'm usually a pretty happy, bubbly kind of person, I think they could tell that something was going on, and she had approached me about taking a leadership role in general civil, which is not an area of law that I practiced. It's just to give you an idea, it's landlord-tenant law, it's breach of contracts up to a certain amount, it's car accidents up to a certain amount, or negligence cases, injuries, those kind of things. So right now I have a lot of different flavor of things. Obviously, they're all civil. But I am leading that court. I am trying to work through the backlog of the pandemic there, and when you sort of go, Paulina, here's the baton, run. I'm one of those individuals that will take you to the finish line. So, that's my goal right now. I'd like to, I think everybody deserves an opportunity to be heard. I think everybody deserves their day in court. I think it's my job as an elected official to serve my community. It doesn't matter who you are and where you come from. If you're in my community, you deserve to have your case heard. And so I take it very seriously, and I take service very seriously. So I tend not to stay late. I do get this question, but that's because I have to take the staff into consideration.
Of course.
If they're there from 8 to 5 and they have families and they have children, that they have dinners they have to cook, then, I have to be respectful of them as well. But, if I need 30 minutes and the case is over, I've never had a clerk tell me I can't stay. I've never had a sheriff say I can't stay. But it's not something I take advantage of, because I know that those people also have lives and also have families, and
Sure.
I want to respect that.
So not everyone, of course, understands. Myself, I really don't clearly understand everything about the jurisdictional system. So there are some judges that are appointed, some judges that run for being a judge. How does it work?
So federal judges are appointed, and obviously they go through Congress and then the president signs off. So federal judges have a lifetime position. Once they're in that position, they don't ever run again, and they cannot be removed unless, they're doing something so egregious that they should be. But very seldom does that happen. In North Carolina, I can't speak for other states, we are elected. So the district court judges, which are the lowest level per se of judges, are elected for 4-year terms Superior Court judges are elected for 8-year terms. Court of Appeals judges are elected for 8-year terms. Obviously, they serve in Raleigh. And then, of course, the Supreme Court of North Carolina is also 8-year terms. And they're also in Raleigh, North Carolina. But
So those are not federal courts.
no. They're two different jurisdictions, federal and state.
Вот смотрите, она рассказывает, как у нас устроена система. Я задала вопрос, почему кого-то надо избирать, а кого-то назначают. И вот она говорит о том, что федеральных судей назначает Конгресс, назначает президент. И как их назначили, они сидят там пожизненно, никуда они не деваются. А вот не федеральные суды, то есть окружные суды, потом высший суд и потом Верховный суд. Да, то есть это дистрикт суды окружные, потом Supreme Court и уже Supreme Court, который в Вашингтоне. То есть они на самом деле все избираются. То есть окружные суды, как она. Это вот она в 2018 году избралась и работала, да, уже судьей. То есть это 4 года. А Supreme Court это 8 лет.
So I'm in district court, which I like to call people's court. You will probably more likely meet a district court judge or stand in front of one, much more likely than any other judge. And so I think that's when I was a clerk, that was the courtroom I worked in. I loved the people. I loved the colors, the flavors,
The atmosphere, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, well, yes, it's certainly not as serious as Superior Court that handles, high-end felonies, obviously homicides and things like that. I practiced in Superior Court as an attorney. I can't say that I'm a newbie. Obviously I would be as a judge, but I've been to, counties, a lot of counties in this state in Superior Court. I enjoyed the practice. But you don't get the kind of exposure and ability to really touch the community, I think, like you do in district court. Our dockets are usually much, much larger. The difference in cases is much, much larger. District court also involves family court as well as juvenile court. And it's the original jurisdiction for that, which means we are the only courts that handle that. And I practiced family as well as criminal. I loved family. I felt like I could understand my clients and help my clients. And so I think I was an effective judge, especially with my own personal experiences. And then more importantly, the juvenile code is also in the original jurisdiction in district court. So any felonies committed under the age of 18 or misdemeanors for that matter all go in front of a district court judge. So I don't know, maybe my mind will be changed sometime down the road. Maybe I'll do, I'll venture out to something different, but I really enjoy what I do right now. I feel like I have a chance to make a difference in my backyard. And that's what I want to do.
That's what you want to do, yeah. Она говорит о том, что быть судьей – это большая ответственность, и в то же время это работа с людьми. Она называет окружные суды народными суды, потому что это все на уровне не корпораций, а на уровне человеческих отношений. Преступления, конечно, не совершаются людьми. Вот она любит свою работу и поэтому делает то, что она делает. Would you share with us maybe some kind of interesting cases of yours that you still remember? Maybe something funny? I really love the case that you shared with me recently about the guy and his mom. But maybe you probably could write a book.
I think the one you're talking about is a 30 plus old son.
Yes.
Locked his 70 plus year old mother out of her home.
Yeah.
Knowing. And he did it because she wouldn't give him his food stamp card.
Ага. Она рассказывает, я говорю, какие-то, может быть, есть такие случаи, которыми она бы поделилась, скажи, запомнить. Она недавно мне рассказывала, значит, был у нее вот какой случай. 30 с чем-то лет парень а, не пустил домой свою маму, в холодный день, шел снег, а он закрыл дверь и не пустил свою маму домой, потому что она ему не дала в пользование свои фудстемповские карточки. Такой хороший
And
человек.
just to be clear, I don't find a lot of the issues necessarily. As a matter of fact, when I found out how old mom was and the fact that he is still living there over the age of 30, I can tell you that I came pretty hard. This is where tough love came in.
И она говорит, что маме-то больше 80, 70, маме больше 70. Она говорит, ну, сам факт того, что мужик в 30 с чем-то лет живет с мамой и еще безобразничает. Короче, у нее, конечно, планка и упала.
So it's important that, I just don't want to. I don't want to come off as if I take anything in court necessarily as, funny per se. I think what was humorous about that story specifically was just the fact that a 30-plus-year-old man who should be living on his own,
Or
especially
helping
in this
his
great
mom.
country, correct.
Мгм.
He saw absolutely nothing wrong with the fact that
И он
he
вообще думал, что
locked
все
her out
нормально, чего
in
это
the
его в
snow.
суд? Это нормально маму, это мать свою запереть на улице. Нечего.
So it wasn't the facts that, or it wasn't the were not the facts that were humorous to me as much as the um, what's the word, the ignorance of
Мгм.
recognizing the seriousness of locking somebody out that age into this, in the snow, in the cold. And this it's as if this house was his, even though mama was paying all the bills. So
И он
uh,
говорит, дом мой, чего это мой дом? Мама все счета оплачивает.
yeah. Well, and a lot of times you'll see that in cases where there's drug addiction or substance abuse and mental health issues. It's incredible to see how children behave towards their parents.
Удивительно видеть, как вообще дети ведут себя по отношению к родителям. И многие дети, которые и курят, и наркотики
It's
употребляют.
heartbreaking. I mean, it's honestly heartbreaking. There are a lot of parents that come in and ask, for you to do something, and
Говорит, приходят и говорят, судья, сделайте что-нибудь, родители.
the problem that I have, it's not whether or not I can help, and when I can, I do. But it's important to know that until that person wants to help, it's like a revolving door. They have to want the help.
Parents?
No,
Pa-
the
or children, yes, yes. So do you see like a trend lately that children are more and more irresponsible, would you say, or not?
That's a funny question. I probably could have been quoted 20 years ago that I could not believe the lack of respect that I am exhibiting as a young adult.
Мгм.
But of course, keep in mind that I was a little bit oblivious to the fact that I was quite disrespectful myself. My parents,
Well, you wouldn't lock your mom out, would you?
well, no, I would probably be dead if I did or tried to.
DED
Uh,
dead.
you haven't met my mama yet, Tatiana, but I no, I don't think I would ever go as far as that. But as far as being defiant, speaking my mind and, not really appreciating the sacrifices my parents did. Yeah, I was definitely in denial or and not necessarily conscious. I wasn't conscious of the fact of their sacrifices and what they did for me. You don't really get that till you become a parent.
Of course.
And for me, it happened to be so early on in my young adulthood that little by little, I came to the realization that I'm very, very fortunate. My dad packing his things up and coming over here and I lived in Austria for a little while in a refugee camp. I came to the United States with $25 in his pocket, and there you go, sink or swim. And I
So what did you tell to the guy? How did the case go?
I definitely confronted him about the fact that it was very, very inappropriate for him to do that. There was also additional testimony to him getting a little physical with mom.
Physical with mom.
Yes, so
Прекрасный парень с талонами на птичье молоко, он еще и кулаки распускал, руки распускал, паразит.
which is why I had a hunch that there was substance abuse. I couldn't, that certainly wasn't in evidence. Mom wasn't telling me that. And he wasn't admitting it to me either. But just, the behavior, the late night, the fact that things kind of got out of control very quickly is either mental health or substance abuse. It's one of the two.
Она говорит также, что, судя по его поведению, то, как он разговаривал, то, что все это очень быстро перешло в стадию просто такого очень горячего конфликта, то понятно, что парень либо на наркотиках, либо у него проблемы с головой.
Well, this wasn't my place to decide whether somebody is guilty or innocent. Obviously, I'm in civil court, so the only thing I needed to decide is whether or not son is going to return back home.
And?
Well, he's going to have to finally find a place to live.
Oh, so he was swept out? Wow. So mom asked for it and you confirmed? Ага. Мамочка попросила сынулечку выкинуть из дома вместе с птичьим молочком и вместе с наркотиками. Что и произошло? То есть она постановила, это было ее постановление, что сынулечка убирается из дома и ищет себе другое времяпровождение в другом месте.
So, I mean, some cases are not obviously as serious as others. There's cases where, I have somebody in custody facing very, very serious criminal charges. The woman files for a protective order, and it's very evident in the courtroom that she does not want to be there. She doesn't want to see him. Very uncomfortable, moving herself away physically, shaken up. And, like I said, if you're a human being with a heart, it's hard not to be a human being and see those things. It's my job to obviously treat everybody fairly. I cannot make any assumptions as to someone's guilt. But it's also my job to determine somebody's credibility. And if I see those physical anxiety, fear, I'm a pretty good gut reader. If my gut's telling me somebody's afraid, I will make an effort to at least make them feel a little less anxious, and kind of, I don't want to use the word walk them through anything, because that could actually make me lose my job. I'm not allowed to advise people on the law while I'm on the bench or off it, quite frankly. But, if somebody's representing themselves and they don't really know what they're doing, every now and then I'll throw a hint or two, because if it's severe enough, I want to make sure that I have enough to grant whatever it is that I need to grant, whether it's a protective order or a custody order or whatever the case may be. Because, obviously there's abuse against children as well. And so,
of course.
Like I said, violence is something that I'm just very, very
sensitive.
I don't tolerate. Yes.
Она говорит о том, что она выработала с годами такое чувство, которое подсказывает ей, что и кто делает что, и это позволяет ей выносить решения. Она чувствует, когда человек боится, когда подает заявление на то, чтобы у человека был ордер на защиту, когда в домах решаются вопросы кулаками, насилием, домашнее насилие. Поэтому она вот гордится тем, что она, в общем-то, думает, уверена в том, что она принимает правильные решения, которые помогают тем, кто нуждается в защите. Thank you so much, Paulina, for your service to the public.
I love what I do.
Она говорит, что она очень любит делать то, что она любит. Any maybe like funny cases or something that you, besides the irresponsible?
Well, okay, let me take you on a lighter note.
Okay.
The protective orders I was referring to earlier were the domestic violence protective orders. If there is no relationship between the parties, then there are what they call no contact orders. And they essentially work the same, but the mechanism in which they work is a little different. So domestic violence orders are a little bit more harsh than just a no contact order, but essentially they do the same thing. They say you are not to have any contact with this individual. And when I first started my lead role in general civil, I actually hear the 50C no contact orders every Monday. And this is the common theme of the three, okay, the most common. The first one is the dog pooped in my yard, and I want you to stop the dog from pooping in my yard. And I thought, my God.
I can relate to that. I really can.
Well, I can relate to it too. The problem is that I can't hold the dog in contempt for failing to obey my order. There's not much I can do there, but there is such thing as animal control. And you can always get their help, especially if somebody is, continuing to be a nuisance because, say, they don't care.
They just enjoy, probably. They just pull the dog to the hated neighbor, and they know when the dog is gonna poop, and they're just enjoying that.
But between you and I, Tatiana, sometimes the dog just likes your yard. I mean, they're great judges of character too. Dogs can usually sniff out a bad guy.
Okay.
So that's one type of case. The other case that is most common are the two women seeing the same man. And the problem is the man doesn't typically come to court because obviously he doesn't want to make one or the other one angry. But the women tend to fault themselves rather than fault the guy. And
of course,
you can always close your door and not let him in. But and then the third one that is sort of circling around now is just neighbors. Every time I go outside or my family goes outside, I get called names or I get harassed or, my garbage can is kicked over or, something like that. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is that the gravity of it is not as serious. And majority of them are not serious enough for an entry of a no contact order. But of course, as I mentioned before, everybody has their right to their day of court and everybody has a right to be heard. And,
so you can actually file. I didn't know you can file to the, is it civil? I hope it's not criminal.
Yes, criminal as well. If a police officer does not witness the crime, you can go down to the magistrate's office and fill out paperwork for an issuance of a warrant of someone by alleging that they did something to you that is criminal. So, our system is based on good faith. The idea is that people aren't going to run downtown unless they've been wronged. Do people abuse the system? Absolutely. But that's where my job comes in, and if the facts don't add up, if, the stories don't mesh, then it's my job to determine whether or not this person either committed the crime or whether or not I should grant a protective order. My motto is always let them talk, because a lot of times people tell things on themselves. If you let them talk long enough. So you can kind of get to the bottom of things by just allowing people to tell their story.
And then the truth comes out.
That's right.
Полина рассказывает, я действительно попросила, Семен, попросила рассказать про смешные истории, вот, и она рассказала, что из ее вот опыта очень забавное получается, когда собаки, то есть хозяева собак, им позволяют какать на одних и тех же, в одном и том же дворе, и, естественно, это вызывает злость, ну и получается такой замкнутый круг. В конце концов, они в судах разбираются, почему собака какает вот там, где она какает. Вот. Я говорю, что, наверное, специально приходят и собачку высаживают там. А собачка тоже говорит, знает, где она может покакать. Собачка знает, где плохие люди живут. И может тоже вполне себе так вот таким образом самовыражаться. Другая категория случаев – это когда две женщины встречаются с одним мужчиной. И там вот тоже образуются совершенно потрясающие условия. А третье – это когда соседи, вот соседи рядом живут, и они только один выходит, другой вот там или другая обзывают и тоже развлекаются таким образом. We have a question from the audience. It's a funny question because we talk about dogs pooping. So our Israeli friend is asking us how to get dogs testified if they do get testified.
Yes. I'll tell you what, when we figure that out, I'll grant a protective order because a dog poops in your yard. Yes, sir.
Вот когда научатся, брать показания у собак, то тогда уже можно будет им ордер защиты выдавать, неприкосновенности. Okay. So, well, now, was question that you belong to the Republican Party. So what made you make that choice?
I immigrated in 1986 and Ronald Reagan was president. So that was the original reason that I registered as a Republican when I took, I was naturalized when I was 18. And I think, I've always liked the idea of law and order. That's not to say that I don't believe that rules and laws are not to be tested. There's a reason why, especially in the United States of America, it's such a young country. We had a constitution, then we had amendments, and we had more amendments, which are actually very hard to get. But the point is that, what our forefathers in the United States thought 200 years ago, may not have encompassed what we think of, what we have today versus what we had 200 years ago. A prime example, I think the best example I can use is the fact that the Constitution of the United States preamble says all men are created equal. The problem was that at the time it was written, there were people that were considered property, including women. So do laws need to be challenged and changed? The answer is yes. Do we do it through violence? No. We do it through the proper process, which is the court system. Obviously it could start with the legislature, but one of the ways to challenge any law that's written by the legislature is to challenge it in court. And, when going through law school and learning the evolution of sorts of the American jurisprudence, you realize that little by little, it was the case law and it was the judicial branch that shaped some of the changes that needed to take place in this country. And so, I'm a rebel at heart. I do believe that you should be free and that you should be able to live any way you want to live and be whoever you want to be. And I guess that's always been something that came across to me and touched me from the Republican Party. But one of the things, probably the more profound things that really touched me in constitutional law was our military and the idea of freedom of speech. There was a case, and I believe this was right after Vietnam War, but took a little time to get through the Supreme Court. But it was the burning of the flags, the protesting when these soldiers came back. And, like in the facts of the case, they talk about spitting at the soldiers and, protesters throwing things at them. I mean, I guess, 2022 and police officers were, similarly positioned right now towards law enforcement. It's my heart, because the idea is that, yes, this young 18-year-old signed this contract to enter into the Army or to the Navy or to the, Marines, but he didn't ask to be shipped off and sent to war. I
No.
mean, at least in the countries where military is mandatory, whether this 18-year-old agreed to it or not, there was no agreement. There was never a choice.
You don't know what you sign
It
up for.
doesn't make
Yeah.
it right or wrong, but we know that our leader, be it a president, a dictator, whoever, is going to say, you're going. There are no choices. Whereas here, they don't draft unless, of course, it was World War II and they needed to, but it's not mandatory. And so these boys are signing up who are, full of life, just starting to basically walk, if you know what I mean. They're
Feel
coming back.
themselves adult and just human being,
Correct.
actual human
And,
being. Yeah.
they don't have what I like to call a dog in the fight. They are going because that's their job. That's what they signed up to do. And they get there and, people are shooting at them. They're shooting at people. Children get involved. Women get involved. We want to protect our own. And it gets messy. War is messy.
Messy, yes.
And so it was hard for me when the Supreme Court, the case came back that, yes, burning the American flag and, protesting was in fact approved, or it was okay with the Constitution of the United States and the freedom of, expression. And, you know, as it kind of saddened me, it also empowered me to the fact that I think people here and those that come here don't realize the power that we actually possess and the freedom that we have in being able to say, I like you or I don't, or I like President Biden or I don't, or I like President Reagan or I don't. Um, Not everybody has that. Not everybody has that ability to do that. There are countries where when you speak out, you get hurt or you get locked up, and so it was a contrast for me to really appreciate to what great lengths our country will go to for the idea of freedom of speech, and
Мы,
that's
мы, мгм.
just
Мы,
Poland.
г- мы говорили о том, почему она стала республиканкой, вот задавали этот вопрос раньше, по-моему, Элла задавала вопрос, и ее ответ был в том, что она когда приехала сюда, в Америку в 97 году, то она уже тогда понимала, что основы Конституции — это и свобода слова, это и свобода выбора жизненного, и стремление к счастью. И вот особенно говорила о, вот, например, сжигание американского флага, то есть да, это даже ничего не получается сегодня, никакого наказания не положено, хотя это, в общем-то, противоречит Конституции, а на самом деле сегодня говорят, что не противоречит. There was a question, thank you, Pauline. There was a question also. Do you think that the judicial system today in the United States effectively working?
Yes.
Работает.
I think, it's
Probably, I believe that our audience is burned by the situation with election 2020, and so many cases were rejected, thrown away. So probably our enthusiasts from chat are really wondering, how could that happen?
Well, first of all, no system is perfect, and we will never achieve that.
Система несовершенна, никогда не будет системой совершенной.
You know, I always joke that the only perfection I'm aware of is Jesus Christ himself. And you know, that's about it. I think that, you know, we all can work hard in improving every bit of the system, whether it's the legislature, whether it's the judicial branch, whether it's the executive branch. I mean, we have a duty, you know, as voters and as citizens and residents to, you know, speak out and do what's right. You know, I think no matter what your background is, I wholeheartedly believe that most people that get into service, they genuinely begin with a good heart and good intentions. And this is where I'm going to end, because I know that you either have another question or it's getting late.
We normally are till 9:30. Normally,
Oh, well,
our time is from 8 to 9:30. Yes,
you know, my son and I have a very open line of communication. He's actually studying to be a lawyer as well. He's about to graduate. And one time I was sharing with him, you know, what I would like to contribute to the community and to society as a whole, and what kind of mark I want to make. And he goes, you know what, Mom? He goes, Hitler had good intentions too. And at first I wanted to throw him out of the car while it was moving. But then I started to think about what he said. And over time, as I have been in this country, I've met a lot of Germans that were older and that actually remember the war as children rather than myself, who was born after the war. And, you know, when they do reminisce and you open your ears and you open your heart to somebody who was not directly involved in the Hitler's regime, but rather a citizen and a resident of Germany, right? The reason Hitler came to power is because he appealed to the German people. He promised things and make lives better for them, which is why they put him in power in the first place. It took time for him to rot, you know. It took time for the heart to turn black. And so it is important that it's not just intentions, it's actions. But I do wholeheartedly believe that most politicians genuinely get involved because they want to make a difference, whether it's their experiences that led them there, whether it's, you know, their beliefs, their culture, their parents, their journey, their lives, whatever it may be. But
do you think it applies to Biden, to Bush? Bush is coming from quite a corrupt
the answer
family.
is yes. The problem is Biden's been there for 40 years.
47, 48.
Well, plus. I should have said 40 plus years since you were.
Yeah. Now probably will be 49, 50.
But you see my point.
Yes.
Biden, you know, at 40
Мы
or
немножко
30,
поговорили, она заговорила о Гитлере, что они как-то разговаривали с сыном в машине, и она спросила его, как ты думаешь, вот какая ситуация вот в мире повернулась вот как бы совершенно ужасным образом. И он говорит, что ну, в самое начальное движение и мотивация была очень хорошими и у Гитлера. Просто он с годами совершенно скоррумпировался, и поэтому он просто превратился в монстра. Она не баллотируется в Верховный суд, Семен, она баллотируется в окружной суд.
I just think it's important to, you know, remember that. That I think things turn black over time, or things rot over.
That's why we need rotation, right?
That's right. I mean, I do believe that it's important. And I think people get cynical in their job You know,
Yes, they
if
do.
you're a police officer that sees terrible things day in and day out, after 10 years, your heart's heavy. I mean, that's just how it is. So it's always a good idea to self-check and recognize when you're walking in somewhere and you're making a judgment call before you actually open the door. You know, it's no different than, I mean, look, I grew up with Polak jokes in New York City. I grew up with Polak jokes in, Charlotte. I grew up in Polak
Yeah.
jokes in law school. And I always took it lighthearted because I
Well,
made
I have been called the KGB spy for all my life in
so
US.
you understand.
Either
And does that
spy or
necessarily mean
Kremlin
that's you?
agent or pro-Putin or whatever. I have been
Correct.
called that everywhere, in a country club, on a golf course, in the store, at work. So it was just,
It's, it's hurtful, but it's what you do with it. And this is what I mean. It's not just good intentions, it's actions. And, obviously with you now running for the, county commission and making a difference in a city that is not necessarily your birthplace, but you care about it and you have a
that's
passion
right.
and you want to make a difference. I mean, that's where it starts. But we all recognize, whether you're from Russia, whether you're from Ukraine, whether you're from Poland, whether you're from Africa, whether or not you're from Greece, or whether or not you're from the Middle East. I mean, there's always going to be people that, frankly, feel better by putting you down. And it's your job to let it roll off your back and show them something different. You don't owe them anything no more than they owe you anything.
That's right. Well, thank you so much, Paulina. We covered everything that we wanted, and it was great to have you over. You're loved by our chatlands, but by
Uh,
our by the inhabitant. How do you do that? I don't know how
it's
to
a
do it.
heart.
Yeah, I understand. Okay,
There you
I
go.
got it. I got it. So it was amazing to have you over. You're an amazing person. I believe that, I mean, I sense like a dog. I will like a good person. And we have an expression in Russian language that we will go over the front line with you to the intelligence task. So I would go over the front line with you.
And I
So
will join you any day.
thank you so much. We will support each other. Спасибо вам всем. Спасибо Паулине. Я ее поблагодарила за то, что она была нашим гостем. И всем вам очень понравилось. Ребят, спасибо, что вы остались. Семен, ты по-прежнему с нами так долго. And in Israel, it's 4:30 in the morning. So,
Oh, my goodness.
yes, we have enthusiasts that stay and watch the program. I'm very much appreciative of that. And I wish both of us luck. I wish you luck. And I hope we deserve to be elected. You re-elected, reclaim your seat, and I hope we will enjoy that in the future. And now we have even in Polish we have dziękuję bardzo.
Nie ma za co.
Нема за co, нема за що. По-українськи, українською мовою, державною мовою, нема за що. Дякуємо. Дякуємо.
Like I said, Tatiana, I could pick up on a few words. It's just that I don't have enough to make out what the context of it is.
Do you understand Ukrainian better than Russian?
It's a little easier to understand than
То
Russian. But the answer is, don't
ви
do that.
розумієте українську мову?
Я розумію трохи.
Трішки.
If you ever want my mom on the show, she could actually speak Russian.
Oh, really?
Yes,
ma'am. We could.
And she could tell you all about me and when I was really, really bad.
Ви маємо пригласити вашу матушку. Можемо завітати матушку до програми.
Дай мені дати.
Дай мені дати? Обов'язково.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Спасибо. Thank you so very much. Дякуємо. Вельми паніже.
Dziękuję bardzo, miłej nocy.
До побачення. До свидания всем. Пока.